All right. Hi, everyone. What a beautiful room. Thank you, Jason, for that introduction and for sharing a little bit of my journey to bridge building. Like Jason said, it was through a film that brought Americans together on opposite ends of the spectrum across easy topics, abortion, guns, and immigration. Right after the 2016 election that I got started in this journey, and then from there went to create a workshop series and then dug into the science and studied all of this. And then before I knew it, I was at the Greater Good Science Center running the Bridging Differences program. And I've been working in this for 10 years now almost. I can't believe it. So I am honored to be here because this has been a really tough month for me. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. I was talking to John about it, and he said, compassion is to suffer with, and he's right. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of my suffering over the last month so that you understand that you're not alone in this, and that even people leading bridge building programs are having hard times right now. So I am Colombian American. I actually came to the US when I was 15, and it's been really hard to see the reality of so many in our communities feeling like they don't belong in our country. And I had to pause and convene my team and think hard, what is it that we're asking people to do right now? And are there limitations to what we're asking them to do? I wanted to get really specific on the messaging. And I'm going to say that John's book helped me. I've been in conversations with colleagues and kind of trusted confidants, and I really appreciated John's perspective as someone who has lived through so much, seen so much, and who represents also many of the communities being affected. So, with that said, I'm going to get straight to, I think, the question that many of you want answers to. Starting more general with, are we really exaggerating how different we think the other group is? Or are those distorted stories becoming more real?
It's a great question. I think really good questions oftentimes don't have clear answers. There's a friend named Martha Minnows who used to be the dean of, I think, Harvard or Yale, one of those fancy schools back east. And she wrote a book, What Difference Does a Difference Make? And if you think about it, it's a really profound question. So it's like we say someone's different. Are they, and what difference does it make? What's the meaning we associate with it? What Juliana really is pointing to, first of all, when we other people, we tend not to know them. They become a caricature. We know they're different in some way that we consider important. But that's almost all we know. And so part of it is we make the difference meaningful by the stories we tell. Yes, there are differences, and some of them are more significant than others, but we are constructing a gulf between each other, refusing to see each other's humanity. Now, part of that's not being done just by ourselves. Are you hearing stories about people or stories from people? Do I get to tell you my story, or someone else telling you a story about me? So conflict entrepreneurs are telling stories about Colombians. We don't have the kind of day-to-day interactions. We don't have the kind of individual interactions that allow us to see our similarities and differences and build new similarities. So it's not just a natural thing, and that's why I said it's a little bit of a complicated question. We attach a lot to these differences, and yet some of them are given to us by somebody else. I think that's actually a good thing in a way, because it suggests there's space for movement. There is no infinite other. But at the same time, some of those differences are significant. but they need not be so significant that I can't see someone else's humanity. And the last thing I'll say is think about the death penalty. The majority of countries, I think it's 144 now, have eliminated the death penalty. When that happened, because at the beginning of the 20th century it was only 4, now it's about 144. And when they discussed whether or not they should be engaged in putting someone else, their own citizens, to death, it was an interesting discussion. And part of the thing was the South African word, the Zulu word, sawubanu, is that everyone carries the spark of the divine in them, even the murderer, even the person who's treason. And so countries that have eliminated the death penalty went through a process of seeing the humanity in all people without exceptions. So countries that have limited the death penalty, for the most part, don't say, no death penalty for the good people, but you can kill the bad people. They don't make that distinction. They say all life is important. Everyone is part of the divine. And there's something deeply disturbing, not about the murderer, but about a state, about an institution who would put its own people to death. So I think that we have to have a different way of thinking about it and recognizing there's some differences, but what do we do with those differences is up to us.
Mm-hmm. John, moving also to a question that I think the audience wants to hear. How do we bridge with a group that could even see a broad attack on BIPOC people as a construct for belonging in their own in-group?
Well, that question, which comes up a lot, I deal with in the book a lot as well, because a lot of othering is done in order to belong. Mm-hmm. I'll just repeat that. A lot of othering is done out of a desire to belong. And so you say, if you want to belong to my group, you got to other that group. You can't be friends with that group. You can't be, whoever the group is, you can substitute people in and out. And so it becomes a double whammy. Now, not only am I othering the group, my own belonging depends on it. Mm-hmm. And so that's the bad news. The good news is what's motivating it is still belonging. Mm-hmm. I'm still trying to find a place I can call home. Now, for the group that's being othered, it's a double whammy as well. And one of the things I say a lot in the book is that sometimes you can't bridge. Mm-hmm. There are situations where it's not possible. Someone's threatening you. Someone's dropping bombs on you. So you have to decide the conditions that are appropriate for you to engage in bridging, because bridging exposes you to a vulnerability. But here's the rub. So there's a risk in bridging. But I would say there's a greater risk in not bridging. And so sometimes we look at the risk of bridging, but we don't look at the risk of not bridging. Mm-hmm. And so when we think of the conditions necessary for us to bridge, I would say, if your list is more than 3 things, it's too long. And sometimes we'll say, after we get rid of racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, capitalism, I'm up to 6 now, then we can bridge. It's like, there's no need to bridge after do all that. Because bridging is about seeing the humanity in a group that you otherwise think is other. Mm-hmm. And if the group is yourself, if the group is, your twin brother or sister, that's a very short bridge. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you have to decide what your guardrails are. And mine are pretty clear. So I talk to groups all around the world, far right, far left, and everything in between. And what I say is no violence. Mm-hmm. And I've had on more than one occasion a group saying, can't guarantee no violence. I say, can't come talk to you. I don't say you have to agree with me. I don't say I have to vote the same way I do, but I say there's certain things that, and it's not many, it's a few things. And if you can't agree to that, then I'm not present. So, in some ways, we all have like a door. You think if you have a door and I have a door and they both close. If your door is closed and mine is open, there's still not a passageway between us. So people you don't have to worry too much about, I don't want to bridge with that person because they hate me. Well, if you do want to bridge with them, they still hate you. You're not going to bridge with them. Both of your doors have to be open. Both of you have to be willing to do something. And my experience is that when you can listen to people's stories, they're much more willing to listen to yours. But when you're not willing to listen to their stories, they're generally not willing to listen to yours. And you can also start, I say we bring together Republicans and Democrats, and I'm not going to say much about that, and I'm glad Sarah's not here. But when we bring them together, the rule is we don't talk politics. We don't start with the thing that has defined us as being different. We talk about other things, like what? Like, who do you love? Like, what made you happy or sad? Like, what's your aspiration? Like, very quick story. I was just in Baltimore, and there's a good friend there that I went to see a couple of years ago, and I called her and emailed her, and I didn't hear back from her. So this time when I was there, I went out to her house, and I got to her house, and it was pretty clear that it wasn't her house, that she wasn't there. Looked at the shoes on the porch, and it's like either she has a new partner who's a giant, or she's not living here. So then I went to a neighbor's house, and I said, where's Susan? I won't tell you her last name, but I'll tell you her first name. And he said, she has dementia, and she's been living in an institution for the last 3 years. It just pained my heart. I love that woman, and I've known her for 35 years. But now, is that a liberal issue or conservative issue? Is that a white issue or black issue? Is that a gay issue or a straight issue? So all of us have had those moments in their life, and for the next 3 or 4 days, and even now, I just carried that with me. And again, so there are things that we bring us together that can transcend some of the things that would otherwise pull us apart.
Thank you, John. I'm going to ask you a few things that really helped me when I was reading the book. And one has to do with kind of why, again, back to the BIPOC issue, why should those folks continue to engage? Folks like me continue to engage. And some of what you said in the book about kind of like maybe being understandable that people like that want to retreat, but how that is segregation that they are imposing on themselves and how they stop being part of a public square and being part of co-creation. I would love it if you could talk about that and maybe weave it with situatedness as well, right, so that we give allies and BIPOC folks a little bit of hope and comfort of what is it that we're talking about and who might we be throwing into an entire category?
Again, a very important question and a nice question to wrestle with and embrace. There's a card, and it says something like, I used to fight my fears and anxieties. Now we just snuggle. So that's part of it, is that I think from my perspective, and this is my perspective, that bridging is about being open to life. And when we are closed off from life, we become smaller and smaller. And it's not a happy place. It's not like this idea, I'll go to a safe place and stay there. I'll go in my corner and maybe no one will notice me. That's not what life is. And the Irish has a thing is that if you live long enough, your heart will be broken. If you live in love, your heart will be broken many times. So I don't want a broken heart. So should I not love? I think the offer oftentimes or statement even, that marginalized people, people of color, poor people, shouldn't have to bridge, it's not really an invitation to something expansive and beautiful. It's a consigning them to a very small, dark world. It's not that it's easy, and it's not. I talk in the book about power, so I'm not saying you do it in all situations without some thought, without being deliberate. But you want people to actually live the fullness of life. And one of the things we talk about in the book, I say we because Rochelle was very instrumental in helping the book be written, is bridging to belong. Now, one of the things we talk about in the book is belonging, right? So belonging, and we have what we call a moonshot, is belonging without othering. Belonging without othering. And from my perspective, my practice, is that you do belong. And it doesn't mean that Berkeley's going to treat you well. It doesn't mean the police are going to treat you well. But I don't need permission from them to belong. I don't need permission. It's like, I belong. We all belong. It's not like, if you do these 5 things, you will then belong. That's a trap. And so claim your belongings. I teach here at Berkeley, and we have a lot of students who are categorized as disabled. And some of them come to me and they say, we want to figure out, how do we fit into the world? That's not your job. The world needs to fit into you. You're here. So, and again, it's not to give other people a pass, but I think it's very dangerous to say, because you've been marginalized, you don't need to actually bridge. As opposed to, oftentimes we see the greatest bridging happen from people who are so-called marginalized. They've embraced and transcended and transmuted the pain, and it's not to glorify it. So, and I talk to a lot of people who have been traumatized, have been, Loretta Ross, I mean, many of you know her story. She was a rape victim, and she got a letter from a prisoner who asked her to come help him. And he said, out in the larger world, I raped women. In prison, I raped men. I hate myself. Could you come help me? And she spoke at our conference, and she told that story. And people said, well, first you had to heal yourself before you could go heal him, right? And she said, no. She said, my reaching out to him was how I healed myself. But she said, also I had to self-medicate before I did it. I'm a human being. It wasn't like, I'm not, whatever. So, but she was saying the bridging with him, the reaching out to him, is what allowed her to heal. So sometimes we say, only after I heal, only after I'm pure will I engage. And I think we have to engage in our messiness. And fear is part of the messiness. That we don't have to get over the fear and then do things. We have to embrace the fear. We have to have a different relationship and have it go with us. And sometimes we have to pull back because we're not ready.
Yeah. John, and where does situatedness, back to that, come in? Because depending on people's circumstances, we can't assign them a category of you're this, you're that, you're able to, you're not able to. Their situations are unique, and their situations are also ever-changing. It's just important for us as bridgers to understand and as allies to understand too.
I'm a little skeptical of allies because I think, and I've written about this, so I'm on record for it. Although I think sometimes, as they say, people closest to the pain should have a critical role, but I think no one should be consigned to no role at all. So people say, if you're doing things with me, let's go for it. If you're doing things for me, we can wait on that. So if we're in this together, we're in it. But if you're only there because you think I need help, we can wait on that. But situatedness matters. There's a good friend who died recently, actually not so recently, 10 years ago now, named Iris Young. She wrote a book called Justice and the Politics of Difference. And one of her insights is that a lot of what we call identity politics is really situational politics. That the reason people who are farmers take a certain position is because of how they're situated as farmers. It's not because there's some innate characteristics associated with farming. Here in the academy, we say race is socially constructed. So how is it constructed? It's constructed through our situatedness. It's not constructed through our genes. It's not constructed through our color. It's constructed through our situatedness and the stories and meaning we make of that. And so part of understanding people is to understand their situatedness. So situatedness says, let's talk about the texture of people that you think of as different. And then, I know we're almost out of time, another piece of that is that we are all have multiple selves. We're not a single thing. You've heard that podcast about the danger of the single story. And so sometimes, again, when we get into these fights, we think of knowing someone's one thing, their race, their gender, their political stance. We know everything about them. And people are constantly changing. In fact, part of the struggle we're dealing with is that we're called upon to change sometimes faster than what we can. But we need to change. We have to change. So we actually work a lot with trying to unearth people's situatedness, having people tell their own stories. And as the situation changes, they change. And I'll end by telling you this, another story. Teaching here at Berkeley. Berkeley is a phenomenal school. And I say that not because I teach here because it's a phenomenal school. And one of the things that's phenomenal about it is that of the quote-unquote elite schools, Berkeley has more first-generation students than almost any other school in the country. It has more first-generation students than all the Ivies combined. And these students come from Central Valley and other places, and they have an identity. And their identity is with their homies back in Fresno. And they have ambivalence about being in Berkeley. And after a few years, they can feel their identity starting to shift. And they're uncomfortable because they want to hold on to that identity back at home. And so I had a student, and he said, I'm not, I'm from the barrio. I'm not into this Berkeley stuff. I don't believe in this. I'm still just the same guy that I was in high school, and my homies who didn't even graduate from high school, that's my posse. And I said, it's a nice story. It's not true, but it's a nice story. He said, what do you mean it's not true? And I said, okay, I want you to do something. You need to write a paper for your class. I want you to write one paper for me and one paper for your homie back in Fresno who didn't graduate from high school. And he wrote the paper and he gave them to me. And I was reading the paper for his homie, and he was like, and the hegemonic capitalists are controlling. And I said, does your friend know what hegemony means? And, I need to change that. And there were like 30 words like that. And it wasn't that he was using the words to be obscure, it's that he was shifting. His vocabulary was shifting. His perspective was shifting. And it wasn't in concert with his friend back home. His situation was shifting. He's at this elite school and something's happening to him. He doesn't even necessarily like it. And we call it in the black community code switching. You know, when we go home, we switch into a different code. But then we come back to Berkeley. So I have, and I'll end by just saying this, I have a wonderful family. I'm 6 of 9 children. I hit the jackpot, the sweet steak in terms of parents. I have the coolest parents. They both have passed away. My brother just turned 84, and he collects all of my books and reads none of them. And it's not because he doesn't want to. He says, John, when I try to read your books, it gives me a headache. I mean, that wouldn't have been true when we were both in high school. But like my student, I use these words, and I try to make myself accessible. But I know my thought process has changed by being exposed to places like Berkeley and these other elite schools. And I know I've changed, and we've all changed. And it's not a bad thing. That's actually a positive thing, that our situatedness call upon us, call different parts of ourselves to come forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jason. We've got some audience questions, and we also have some questions that were sent before. I know that one of the questions from the audience was on tips, right? Like, how do we do this, John? How can we move forward? So I'm just going to summarize 3 big takeaways from your book, and then we're going to move to some of these. So back to situatedness. Can we remain open to the other's situatedness, to their inherent humanity? It may be more impactful to think of someone's situatedness rather than to try to understand their personal motivations, if such a thing were even possible. So being open to a more complex story. Being vulnerable. I love a German philosopher that you quoted who likened human relationships to porcupines in the cold. He said they try to gather together to share their warmth, but in doing so, they stick and injure each other. We need each other in ways that require that we be vulnerable to each other. And yes, accepting that that vulnerability also exposes risk. Mm-hmm. And the mistake is thinking that we can close off from each other. It's the opposite. Accepting our interdependence was one that you also kind of honed in on. When we look at the nature of the ancient African concept of Ubuntu, meaning I am because you are, Ubuntu suggests that we need one another, not just to negotiate what we want in life, but our very being. So just a few words of inspiration. And let's see, from the questions that were sent previously, let's move to a question by Barbara Whitney. Since bridging is crucial for belonging to be actualized, how are you maintaining some equilibrium as the United States is on the brink of losing its democracy? Simple
we have
question.
The next question. So I've been writing a memo, and I'll keep writing it, and a lot of people who have, quote unquote, influence, power, money have asked me to write this memo. And one of the things I say in the memo is that, the Trump administration is taking a sledgehammer to our critical institutions. So this is not business as usual. This is not Democrat versus Republican. And we say this in the other book that Stephen and I wrote called Belonging Without Othering. Trump is a demagogue. Demagogue doesn't play by the rules. They don't respect the rules. He doesn't respect the Constitution. He doesn't respect the Congress. He doesn't respect the Supreme Court. And he sure as hell doesn't respect the people. And he's acting on that. And it's not going to be easy to turn it around. It's not going to be easy to, if you burn down a house, building it is a slow process. Burning it down is quick. But in ever searching for a silver lining, when the house is burned down, you can build something on top of it from the ground up. I would say you might not want to build back the exact same house. So somebody, as we sort of think about the belonging project as opposed to an enlightenment project, the belonging project where there is no other, what does that look like if we were to start building that? Because in a sense, potentially, Trump has cleared the way. The house is being burnt down. I think we should still try to put the fire out. We should still try to save what we can, the pictures, the heirlooms, the furniture. But we're going to lose a lot, and people are going to suffer. But can we take that and build something different? Can we imagine? And I'm not against tinkering. I'm not against transactional. But if the transactional and tinkering is gone, let's be more radical. That's what King was talking about when he talked about the beloved community. The beloved community and the belonging community is the same community. Mm-hmm. Can we actually create, there's a book out of Stanford called Belonging by Design. Can we design structures to say to people, you belong? And one way you do that is that we don't design them for people, we design them with people. And who are the people? Everybody. Not Democrats, not the hipsters from Berkeley, not the techies from Stanford, everybody. That's a tall ask. But to me, that's the charge. So I haven't given up. I mean, one of the things that, I was talking to some Republicans when I was in D.C., and they're saying, everything's been bad for 40 years. And so Trump has to sort of destroy everything. I said, well, I don't quite go that way. But there's truth that our democracy has never been perfect. We've never had a perfect union. And one approach is therefore, destroy it. Another is, therefore, improve it. Our schools have never been all they could be. One approach is, therefore, destroy them. Another approach is, therefore, improve them. Our health has never been all it could be. So one approach is just die. Another approach is like, okay, I'm going to start exercising tomorrow. So I think we have a choice. And I think it's too soon to say, after 6 weeks, that our democracy is dead. It's certainly been tested. But I'm sure most of you probably know the leak that's apparently went out on the mainstream to Republicans. And I'm sorry to be talking so much about Republicans. I'm really not talking about Republicans. I'm talking about Trumpers, which are not the same. So Congress is in recess now. And the message was, when you go back home, don't have town meetings because people are mad. So let's not, and this is your own constituency, don't meet with your people because they're mad. That's a good sign. People should be mad, regardless to what your political ideology is. That's a sign that our democracy still has some life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, a question from the audience. What are some of the ways a new story of us can be effectively scaled? In other words, how does such a story take hold practically, mechanically?
Great question, and I have an answer. So how many of you saw Inside Out? There it is, right? So I teach the mind science. I was one of the people who pushed out the stuff around implicit bias and stereotype threat, all these sort of academic terms that no one had heard of at the beginning of this century. And we decided to push it out. And we pushed it out, and we wrote books about it, and the hidden brain, and all these. And no one, my brother included, read it, right? And then Pixar made a movie. It's like, oh, yeah. And literally, I have a friend, I don't think she's here tonight. She has a teenager, and she was like, I can't relate to my teenager. I say, see Inside Out 2. the next version, which is about teenagers. My point is that you take these complex ideas, and they're rigorous, but then you cook them so that they're accessible, and they're fun, and they actually talk to the amygdala. That's how you do it. You take it, and so you go down to Pixar and you say, we want to make a kids movie about belonging. Here's another example. Complexity is actually on our side. So when we are in a binary between me and the other, us and them, the them is always flat. We don't know what kind of vegetables they like. We don't know. I was talking earlier about Cass, Isabel Wilkins. She wrote another book called The Great Migration. What was it, Sun? The Warmth of Other Suns. People who read that I talked to, everybody, whether they were black, Irish, Jewish, they saw themselves in that. A really good storyteller tells a story that becomes somewhat universal. So you take Isabel Wilkins and Pixar, you got it. That's it. But you really can scale it up. And just in case you think it's just hyperbole, think about the first billion-dollar blockbuster movies starring black people. Anyone know what that was? Black Panther. Made here by people from the Bay Area. So the thing that was interesting about Black Panther, I mean, it was a lot interesting, and I don't know if you like action movies or not. There was no hero. There was characters struggling. Excuse me. Black Panther was one of them, and Killmonger was the other. But you didn't know who to root for. They were complex beings. They were flawed beings. They were human. And it was a billion-dollar film. It reached the masses. Can we tell a complicated story that can reach the masses? I think we can. I can't, but maybe Jason can.
There's a story that was questioned, that was sent before, also a story, that I think would be really wonderful for you to answer. So this question is by Jabbar Mahiri, and he actually cites a quote that we often cite in the bridging program at the GGSC from James Baldwin, who you quote quite a bit in the book. We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. Just powerful. As I was reading the book, I didn't quite understand how you'd fit into that quote. So I was hoping to ask you that in the context of spiritual bridging and what that means for you.
So my family is very religious and very spiritual. My mother and father were bodhisattvas, and just incredibly loving people. And so I feel like I got a foundation that didn't take root probably until I was in my 30s. Because when I was in my 20s, I was pissed at everybody. I was pissed at the world. Associated with, struggled. I knew Stokely Carmichael, Martin Luther King. I was part of the Black Panthers. It was like, you spit on me, you better step back. It's like, and so at some point, things start to shift. And part of it is really just in the very concept of what do we mean by spirituality. Most of our interactions are encouraged to be transactional. They used to be, economists used to talk about the rational brain, sort of you make a cost-benefit analysis to everything. And it didn't work. They kept saying people trying to maximize profit should behave this way. And these stupid people are not doing that. Maybe they don't realize they're not maximizing profit. And then eventually what they came up with is that That's not how people actually live their lives. And they came up with a whole new discipline called behavioral economics, which is that instead of talking about how people should behave, they look at how people actually do behave. And all of us will make sacrifices that, from a cost-benefit analysis, will be hard to justify. We do it for our kids. I mean, literally, economists say, from an economics perspective, it doesn't make sense to have children. Now, there are a lot of other reasons it doesn't make sense to have children, and yet most of us still have children. And it's not because we're stupid. It's because there's something else in life. And to me, the heart of spirituality is recognizing our profound connection to each other, our profound connection to the earth. You know, we a lot of times celebrate, and we didn't do it today, I don't think, that we're on stolen land, Native American land. And we make some nod to the fact that Native Americans talk about, or indigenous people, not just Native Americans, talk about the earth as the mother, but not as a metaphor, as a fact. And that creates a whole different relationship with the earth. It's one not of just exploitation. So if we really see each other as profoundly connected, not just see it intellectually, but experience it. And I oftentimes say, we're literally born attached to another human being. You know, some of you know I have a baby girl. I don't know if she's still here. But almost every day I wake up and it's like, I'm amazed at how much I love her. I mean, it just doesn't, it's just off the chart. I don't know where that comes from, and I could say a bunch of things about it, but it's like, this little creature is I can't even describe. I'm a person who deals with words, and I can't describe how much I love her. And also, I can't describe how much pain I sometimes feel just in terms of how badly we treat each other. Joanna Macy, who also lives in the Bay Area, she wrote a book called World as Lover, World as Self. And in the book, she talks about her deep depression and struggle as she watched us denigrate the earth. Because she loves the earth. She's a part of the earth. And so part of the thing about spirituality is that if we start experiencing this deep connection, we also will experience, like Joanna Macy, a lot of pain. But also then we have the possibility of connecting and have this profound joy. And I'll end this question by saying this. Years ago, I was sort of down and out, and I tend not to be. And my dad came to me, and he said, "What's going on, John? You seem to be depressed." And I said, "I am." He said, "What's going on?" And I said, "It was some struggle I was in." I said, "You know, this is really important, and I can't do this by myself." He's a theist. He believes in God in a way that I probably don't. I don't know if I do or not. I don't spend much time on that question. But he said, "You're never by yourself." And that answer, even though he was saying it in terms of from a theistic point of view, has really carried me, that we're never alone. And so the spirituality suggests that I feel your pain, but also I feel your joy. And so to me, I'll end by just saying this. When we start bridging from a spiritual perspective, it's not transactional. I'm not open to you because you're going to be nice to me. I'm not open to you because you're going to give something back to me. The South African word sawubona, which is the God in me sees the God in you, is that at times, not all the time, I experience that. And even when I don't experience it, I want to live my life that way. I want to live my life recognizing, organizing, celebrating that we're profoundly, profoundly connected to each other. And as James Baldwin says, we can't do anything about it. He says, some of my countrymen find that fact inconvenient. And he says, at times, so do I. But we can't do anything about it. We're stuck with each other, folks. So let's party.
Thank you, John. What stuck with me from the book, you say, when there's radical openness, it is not simply that I am open, but that the open goes beyond the I. So it's really about putting yourself in second place sometimes and understanding that this may be hard for me right now, but this is what we must do as a society to move forward. Those words deeply, deeply touched me. And again, it's up to each of us to determine where is our line, what is our own boundary. For John, which I was struck by, he says, but what if we're willing to bridge and the other person does not recognize our humanity? While this may be a reasonable place to draw a line in other types of bridging, it is not the line when we are bridging from a spiritual place. In spiritual bridging, there is no line. I know, that requires some character and dedication and an inspiration for us all. Thank you, John, for your contributions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to do a turn and talk. And the invitation is that you all close your eyes for a moment, take a deep, deep breath. If you can think about a place or a situation where you felt belonging. Now ground that feeling in your body, noticing your senses. What did that place or situation sound like? What did it feel like? And what did it look like? Wow, those bells were intentional. All right, and the idea is that you turn to a partner and you tell them about this experience of belonging. And then, as John and I exit the stage, we're going to invite the Belonging Resident Company back to the stage, and they're going to pick 2 stories, and they're going to act them out for us at the top, and we're going to wrap you up with that. But for now, let's give John, again, another big round of applause. I'll escort you off.